Good morning, everybody. We're beginning week 3. This term is rushing right along. In week 3, you're going to have a couple of not new, but not yet very well explained concepts that we will delve into a little more deeply. And those concepts are jurisdiction and venue. I have explained both of these concepts fairly lengthily in my written announcement, so I won't make this a very long video, but I do want to just say a little bit about it instead of just writing about it, because very often it's easy for students to confuse the concept, not just students but lawyers, to confuse the concepts of jurisdiction and venue. Jurisdiction refers to the authority that a court has to hear certain kinds of cases. And here we're talking about subject matter jurisdiction. Venue, on the other hand, refers to the place. Venue just means place. It refers to the place where a trial will take place. And venue, therefore, cannot be determined until jurisdiction has already been determined. In my written announcement, I couple these two concepts with yet another legal principle, which is the principle that in American law, courts are not allowed to deal with hypothetical situations. They have to wait until something has already happened before you can ask them to make a decision. That's called the case and controversy requirement. So let's assume we have a case and controversy, which we do in our hypothetical that our final project is based on. In that hypothetical, we're dealing with a bank robbery. Now, the first thing you have to determine, or that you will have to determine when you're doing your final project, is what courts have jurisdiction over bank robbery. Bank robbery is a subject matter, so you have to decide, you have to find out, you don't decide, you research this. You have to find out what courts have jurisdiction over bank robbery. Hint, it's federal courts. Now, let me just explain in this video, and I'll mention this as we go along over and over again. Our final project case scenario is a little bit confusing, and I will just tell you that straight out. And here's why. Because it is set, the bank robbery in it is set in Washington, D.C. Therefore, you've got a crime that's being committed in a federal district where, of course, all law is federal, and a specific crime, bank robbery, that no matter where in the United States it's committed, is a federal crime. That is, and I apologize for this, that is a very confusing situation, and it just is. So let's just go with it and recognize that we are dealing with, let's forget that it's in Washington, D.C., and just remember that bank robbery is a federal crime. So jurisdiction, therefore, will be in the federal courts. All trial level matters in the federal courts begin, except for the specialty matters, begin in the U.S. district courts. So we know that jurisdiction will be in the U.S. district court. Now, where's venue? In a criminal case, the question of what the proper venue is actually very simple, because venue in a criminal case is based on one thing and one thing alone. And of course there's an asterisk to that, because in the law nothing is ever that clear. I'll explain that in a second. But in a criminal case, venue is based on where the crime occurred. So, in order to tell which U.S. District Court will try our case, you look to where the crime was committed. It was committed in Washington, D.C. Therefore, you have to look up which U.S. District Court sits in Washington, D.C. What's its name? And put that in your actual Milestone 1, and most importantly, even if you miss it in Milestone 1, put it in your final project. I tell you this because I have to grade you on this. I've got to grade you on it very strictly, and I love it when everybody gets this right. And all you have to do to get it right is listen to this video. Okay, here we go. We have a bank robbery committed in Washington, D.C. So we know it's a bank robbery, therefore it's federal, therefore it will be tried in a U.S. District Court. We know that it's in Washington, D.C., and I'm not going to tell you the name of the District Court in Washington, D.C. I've got to leave a little bit for you to do on your own. But find that out. Okay. The next thing we're going to be dealing with in this week 3 is really something else entirely. It's a discussion board in which you get to speculate about your future a little bit and discuss what specialty courts you might end up being involved with. Now, it could be that you are anticipating a career that won't ever put you in contact with any specialty courts, and that's fine. In that case, just pick one that interests you in one way or another and write a little bit about it. The specialty courts that you write about can be specialty courts in your state, or they can be one of the federal specialty courts if you think you might end up being involved with one of those, say bankruptcy courts or admiralty courts or immigration courts or whatever. The point of that exercise, as you can imagine, is for you to do a little bit of research into the various specialty courts that exist in the United States and see a little bit about what they do. In reading your week 2 discussions in which you describe the court systems of your various states, many of you have already mentioned specialty courts that exist in your states, and of course you can choose one of those to write about if you'd like. I think that's about all I need to say to you today. I am attaching the grading rubric for Milestone 1 to my written announcement. I can't really urge you strongly enough to refer to that grading rubric as you write your Milestone 1. And this is a blanket encouragement for all of our assignments. Refer to the grading rubrics because I have to grade you on every element of those rubrics. And if you omit to address one or more of those elements, then you get a 0 in the ones you haven't talked about at all. I don't want that to happen, and I know that even less do you want it to happen. So please just refer to the grading rubric. It'll take you just a few minutes. It'll pay off immensely in the end, and I think you'll be glad you did it. Have a wonderful week. I hope that the weather where you are is not as wintry as it might very well be. Stay warm, stay inside, and I'll read your work. Bye-bye.